You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned? If you don't come, you're no longer family. It's common sense since you married my son, isn't it? That's what Effie, my mother-in-law, said to me, seeking agreement from Cody. I stopped Cody, who seemed like he wanted to say something, and agreed to her proposal. Goodness. Marrying someone so naive to the world is such a hassle. As long as you understand. If you don't come, it's divorce. I'll re-educate you from now on. I was sick of her ridiculous remarks. Little did I know, this would be the last trip with my in-laws. I'm Liliana, 32 years old. I run an app development company. It's still a small company, but I love my work, and every day is a joy. My husband, Cody, is 37, 5 years older than me, and works at a bank. Both of us are passionate about our work, and we can talk about it for hours, often until morning. Cody is very understanding of my work, and we share household chores. We love our work so much that, even after 4 years of marriage, we don't have kids. But we both like children and hope to have them someday. My family runs an auto parts factory. Founded by my dad, it's now run by my brother. Thanks to them, I had the freedom to pursue my dream of starting my app company. Even though our industries differ, I often consult with my brother and dad, who are also business owners. They are always supportive, making my family a huge pillar in my life. Cody's family runs a small factory. Being an only child, Cody was expected to take over. But he refused and chose banking instead. There were good reasons for this decision. Firstly, the factory wasn't doing well. And, Fael Andy was actually considering closing the company with his generation. Honestly, running a small factory is tough nowadays. As a child, Cody often heard Andy talking with bank employees over the phone. Once, he met a very kind and cool banker during a visit to the factory and started accompanying Andy to the bank for meetings, just to meet him. Eventually, Cody aspired to be a banker, studied hard, and now works at a major bank. He studied hard for that dream and eventually joined a major bank, where he is now. Our marriage seems fine on the surface, but it's actually not going well. Effie doesn't think highly of my job. Since I can work remotely, there are days I work from home. She sees it as a frivolous job and doesn't understand it at all. I get it, for an older generation like our parents, my job is hard to grasp. It's not a physically demanding job, but it's still work, and it can be exhausting. I always adjust my work schedule around the in-laws' plans, so I never inconvenience them. I don't insist on them understanding, but it's frustrating when they think remote work is easy just because I have a flexible schedule. There are other things Effie disapproves of about us. We built our house when we got married, located about halfway between our parents' homes. Despite taking different routes, it takes less than 30 minutes to reach either house. As a dual-income couple, we manage our spending and savings separately. We value our independence and privacy, even as a couple. We contribute a fixed amount for living expenses every month, save the rest for the house, and manage our own money otherwise. Effie disapproves of this lifestyle too. She thinks it's wrong for a couple to talk about privacy. According to her, it's odd for family members to have secrets, and she doesn't consider them a true family. I think because Effie doesn't like me, she finds fault in everything I do. She adores her son Cody, so I'm just a nuisance to her. Every time we meet, she makes snide remarks about us not having children yet. It's something I'm sensitive about, and I'd rather not be reminded. Childbearing is a delicate topic, and usually, it's polite to avoid it, but Effie brings it up every time, so I've started to avoid her. To not worry Cody, I've been staying late at work on purpose to avoid meeting her. Effie has done many other surprising things. But there was one incident I couldn't forgive. It happened on the day of my best friend's wedding. After her wedding, my friend was moving abroad. We wouldn't be able to meet as often since we both work. I was really looking forward to celebrating her big day. However, a week before the wedding, Andy came to me with a request. He had an important business reception and wanted me there. I naturally refused. The only thing more important than my friend's wedding would be a parent on their deathbed. That night, something unexpected happened. When I got home from work, my in-laws were at our house. As soon as she saw me, Effie confronted me angrily.
Liliana, what are you thinking? Refusing Andy's request is outrageous. You're my son's wife. It's only natural to prioritize family obligations. Your refusal is unacceptable. You need to rethink your priorities.
She yelled at me. Cody was there too, but he said nothing. After asking, I found out the reception was critical for the future of the company. But to me, my best friend's wedding was just as important. I told Effie that. I understand what you both are saying. But my best friend's wedding is an important event for me, and I don't want to miss it. Besides, I'm not even an employee of Andy's company. As I said this, even Cody chimed in. Can't you make an exception this time? This is really about the survival of the company. I'm going too, and it's a family effort. We can make it up to you for missing the wedding. It's a family crisis. Can't you help us? I was shocked. I never thought Cody would say such a thing. He knew how much I was looking forward to the wedding. And then Andy spoke. I understand Liliana's point, but this time, we really need your help. The atmosphere made it hard for me to refuse. It wasn't just any reception. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to skip my best friend's wedding. I told my friend the truth and explained why I couldn't come. Given that I had previously talked to my best friend about my family situation, she understood my predicament. In fact, she was more concerned about me. I'm fortunate to have such a kind friend. I felt guilty for missing her big day, but once the decision was made, I had to focus on making the reception a success. On the day of the event, Cody and I arrived at the venue early and tried to contact Effie. However, for some reason, Effie didn't answer her phone. As I worried about what to do, the in-laws finally arrived at the venue just 10 minutes before it was set to start. To my surprise, they were in a disheveled state, with messy hair and their suits and shirts all wrinkled. I was shocked and asked Effie, "What happened? What's with your shirt? Today is an important reception, right?" She awkwardly responded, "I just overslept."
Liliana, make sure you're not rude.
I was so close to snapping back with,
I don't want to hear that from you.
But somehow, I managed to hold back. I really want to give myself credit for keeping my composure. During the reception, Effie, not knowing how to converse properly, made a series of rude comments to our guests. It seemed she meant them as jokes, but their strained smiles made it clear they weren't received well. As expected, we didn't secure the contract, and the reception ended without success. I thought to myself that it was to be expected. If I had known it would be like this, I would have preferred to go to my best friend's wedding. I was infuriated at being dragged into such a disastrous reception, ruining my plans and causing issues with the in-laws. To my dismay, they didn't acknowledge any wrongdoing. According to them,
after such a lavish reception with no contract, it's almost like dealing with con artists. Good thing we didn't make a deal with such strange people.
I was speechless with astonishment. How can they be so blissfully unaware? After this incident, I became even more uncomfortable with my in-laws and started avoiding them. But unfortunately, there's something I can't avoid. Cody's family has a tradition of going on a family trip every year since his childhood, and it has continued even after we got married. Since our marriage, I've been expected to join these trips. But I'm always stuck with the chores and driving. Arranging hotels, booking meals, researching tourist spots, all these tedious tasks are my responsibility. And if I dare to voice my opinion, I'm immediately shut down with a "don't overstep." Even when we visit tourist spots, I'm often left to stay in the room, never getting to visit places I like. Honestly, I dread these annual family trips and always hope I might fall ill on the day. Now, this year's trip season has arrived. Despite their claims of being financially tight, my in-laws insist on a lavish trip. As usual, I was tasked with finding the hotel. I plan meticulously to keep Effie, who's always complaining, in a good mood. Since I'm the only one who doesn't drink, I'm the default driver, but I don't mind as it spares me from their conversations. However, a crisis occurred. Just before the trip, I received news that my mom had collapsed and was in critical condition. In such a situation, going on a trip, even a short one, was out of the question. I lost my composure, thinking I needed to see my mom as soon as possible. It was the day before the trip, but I decided to cancel and started preparing to go to the hospital. Cody offered to come to the hospital with me, but I refused. It felt like he was implying my mom wouldn't make it, which I didn't want to hear. When Cody and I went to tell Effie we couldn't join the trip, she exploded in anger.
You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned? If you don't come, you're no longer family. As my son's wife, it's common sense to prioritize the family trip, right?
Right, Cody? Effie said this, seeking agreement from Cody. Effie interrupted Cody, who looked like he wanted to say something. As if to say she wouldn't entertain any opposing opinions. In that situation, I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't find the words to speak. Nothing could be more important than being with my mom in her critical condition. Just as I was about to respond, my brother called. It seems mom's condition is serious, but a bit stable. I expressed my desire to rush to her, but he said visiting isn't possible right now due to a contagious disease outbreak. He mentioned that if she recovers, we could arrange a short visit later, so there was no point in coming immediately. Hearing this, I hesitated about what to do. Noticing my indecision, my brother asked what was wrong. I honestly explained the situation about the trip and my current dilemma. My brother, a bit angry, made a good suggestion. I hadn't thought of it in my distress, but the trip destination was near my parents' home. He assured me that I could quickly get to my family's house from the hotel if needed, and there shouldn't be any problem. Indeed, that's true. If I can't visit the hospital, staying at home or at the hotel doesn't make much difference. Accepting my brother's suggestion, I told Effie.
All right, I'll go on the trip.
Effie responded.
Goodness. If you had said that from the start, I wouldn't have had to get angry. It's hard to marry someone so naive. As long as you understand. If you don't come, it's divorce. Honestly, I'll have to re-educate you from now on.
Cody looked surprised, but we agreed to go on the condition that I could leave for the hospital if needed. Effie remarked.
It would be trouble if our driver suddenly disappeared, right? Oh, good. You're part of this family now, so our needs come first. Remember your role as my son's wife. This is a major event. The family trip should be your top priority.
Her triumphant attitude and obvious excitement really irked me. But to avoid further trouble, I decided to endure it. On the day of the trip, I was so worried about Mom that I couldn't put down my phone, yet Effie was drinking beer from the morning. The back seat of my car, which I was driving, turned into a party scene. I was surprised to see Cody joining in the drinking. However, this was a trip for which everyone had rearranged their schedules. I told myself that it would be nice if everyone could enjoy the trip since we had all made the effort to come. During the trip, Effie's whims were relentless. Demands to stop for the bathroom immediately or to go to the grocery store for more alcohol. I felt like a servant. But I was prepared to endure such things. That's when my mobile phone rang. It was a call from my brother, thankfully informing me that Mom had survived. Her condition had stabilized, and she had regained consciousness. The diagnosis was subarachnoid hemorrhage. However, I couldn't be completely at ease yet. There were concerns about potential after effects. It was reassuring to have my brother keeping me updated, as I was feeling anxious. When I shared the news of Mom's recovery with my in-laws, Effie commented, "If she's better, there's no need to bother us with such news. You're making a big deal out of nothing." And then Andy added, "Exactly. No need to spoil our trip with such grim news. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves." I was disgusted that Andy shared Effie's view and didn't want to think of these people as my family. During the trip, they made a ruckus in the hotel, drinking and partying, which was truly embarrassing. This incident deepened my distrust of my in-laws. Thankfully, Mom's condition remained stable, and there was no need to rush to the hospital, allowing us to complete the trip and return home. I was relieved. While I was sorting out the laundry, Effie came to our house. Wondering what it could be this time, she said, "You have a dryer at your house, right? We don't have one, so let me use it." And showed up with loads of laundry. I was exasperated and replied, "There's a laundromat with dryers. I have laundry of my own, and I'm using it right now, so it's not possible." To which she retorted, "Always so stingy. Once you're done, it's fine. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow. Leave it finished by then." And attempted to leave her laundry in our washroom. "Always so stingy. Once you're done, it's fine. I'll come to pick it up tomorrow. Leave it finished by then." And attempted to leave her laundry in our washroom. Cody stepped in. "Go to a laundromat. Liliana is tired, and she has work tomorrow. It's not possible." Effie got angry, feeling her son was defending me. She left in a huff, spewing insults and slamming the door, leaving the laundry behind. In hindsight, if things had been different that day, maybe the course of events would have changed. Later, Effie returned and said, "During the trip, I realized something. Liliana, you lack the awareness of being married to Cody. We might face similar situations in the future. Since we couldn't discuss it, I've decided that Liliana should make a decision." She put a family contract and divorce papers on the table. I was speechless. What even is a family contract? It was ridiculous and confirmed my belief that she can't have a normal conversation. The saving grace was Cody's reaction. He said, "I have something to say. If you keep imposing your biased views on us, I'll cut ties. I can't deal with this anymore. What do you think Liliana is? She's not your servant or housekeeper. You're the one who's mistaken about your position." Effie was stunned. Until now, Cody had hardly ever opposed anything. It wasn't because he agreed with Effie's ideas, but rather he kept quiet to avoid the hassle. Following Cody's words, Effie's anger turned towards me. "You've changed Cody since marrying him. He used to be so sweet. It's crazy for him to talk to me like that. You must have brainwashed him. Turn him back to the old Cody," she accused, confronting me. She believed I had brainwashed Cody into defying her. Then, Cody spoke up for me. "The one doing the brainwashing is you, right?
always going on a rampage witut listening to anyone's opinion. Frankly, you're a toxic parent. You never let me do what I wanted to do. After getting married, instead of calming down, you started spewing your venom at Liliana. Enough is enough. I'm not going to divorce, and if you have a problem, you should stay out of our lives," Cody said. Hearing this, Effie turned to Andy, who was with her, and burst into tears. Andy responded, "If that's what Cody thinks, then fine. We'll cut ties. Do whatever you want," and stormed out. I was surprised, but happy that Cody stood up for us like that. Feeling frustrated, I told my brother about this. He became furious. Saying he couldn't stay silent if they were acting this way, he decided to take action. It led to a tragedy in the in-laws' family. Turns out, my brother's company was a client of my in-laws' company. We had kept our family's company name a secret to avoid creating a power imbalance. The in-laws had no idea they were dealing with my family's company. But with things as they were, we couldn't continue like this. Though I had been patient, avoiding mixing business and personal matters, it had reached its limit. My brother had been having issues with them not meeting deadlines. You can't cherish those who don't cherish you. I discussed it with Cody before talking to the in-laws, and he agreed. Cody also said he had had enough. My brother ended the contract with the in-laws company. It was a business decision. They had been a problematic company, not paying on time and missing deadlines, but we had tolerated it because it was Cody's family's business. But there was no longer a need for that. Later, when my in-laws found out about this, they came to us in tears. Now they are constantly apologizing. They pleaded with my brother to reconsider the contract, but of course, that was impossible. It was their responsibility for not meeting deadlines. They should have been grateful for our patience. Cody explained everything to his parents, but they refused to accept it and ended up cutting ties in a rage. Cody wasn't sad, he felt relieved. He had been torn and tired, struggling between us and his family. Since then, we've been living peacefully. I learned that Cody had been supporting his family financially, but he's stopped that now. The in-laws' factory went bankrupt. Even without this incident, it was on the brink of closure, drowning in debt. I heard that Cody had been paying for those annual trips, and it's astonishing how they could behave that way using someone else's money. Now, the in-laws are living modestly, and Effie has recently started working. I was honestly surprised to see her, who used to call herself a president's wife, working. One day, I saw Effie being scolded while doing a cleaning job. I felt bad for thinking this was karma. She'll learn the harsh realities of society and hopefully straighten up. As for us, work is going well. We haven't had children yet, but we enjoy our jobs and life is fulfilling. We are planning an overseas trip for our next vacation. For a while, we're thinking of enjoying life without children. The reservation is confirmed for 7, haha. This person will be seated separately, please. That voice ringing out cheerfully belonged to my mother-in-law, a woman who relishes giving me a hard time. But that's all going to end today. Knowing a secret, I've decided to expose everything in front of all our relatives. My name is Emily. I'm a 28-year-old chef. After graduating from culinary school, I found work in a well-known Western restaurant, where I met my husband, Chris, who was a regular customer. My husband runs a family-owned electronics store in our local area, which has been in his family for 3 generations. Last year, after his father passed away, Chris formally took over as the 3rd-generation owner of the store. As for me, I come from a very ordinary household, but my father, mother, and my elder brother are all chefs like me. Perhaps because of that,
I've had many opportunities to cook since I was a child, along with my natural talent. I graduated at the top of my class from culinary school. I am rather shy, but cooking has always been my pride and joy. At least, that was the case before I married Chris. As soon as we got married, I started living with my mother-in-law. Chris has always lived at home, and his father's death was still recent, so he pleaded with me to move in because he was worried about his mother. I was looking forward to our married life. I knew that since Chris was the eldest son, we would have to live with his mother someday, but I never thought it would happen this soon. I thought I should have told him about my reservations before we got married, but the circumstances were what they were, and I didn't want to be seen as an unpleasant woman. But what's done is done. However, when we started living together, my mother-in-law was very kind at first. She brought home cream puffs from the bakery I liked, and regarding household chores, she, being a housewife, would say, "You're working, so it's fine," and took on most of the work herself. She cooked every meal, but I could never get used to her taste. No matter what she cooked, the taste was always too strong. I heard that she was originally from the southern part of the country. I remember seeing on TV or reading somewhere that people from the South prefer salty foods. But that's just one example. Some of my coworkers from the South prefer less salty food. However, my mother-in-law's dish was beyond that level. When she made a stew, it was so black that I couldn't tell what the ingredients were. Of course, when I tasted it, it was like drinking barbecue sauce. She would say, "You need a strong flavor to help you eat your bread, right? Come on, Emily, have some more." I can't. It's too salty. When I glanced at Chris, he said, "Did you make it less salty today? Do you notice?" I wasn't sure about Emily's preference, so I made it a bit less salty. "What? Like this?" I was terrified. For a while, we continued to live like this, but my job started to suffer, perhaps because I was constantly eating my mother-in-law's cooking. My tongue was numb, and I couldn't taste anything. Luckily, I always had the head chef check my work at the end, and I never got any reprimands. However, feeling this wouldn't do, I started getting up earlier than my mother-in-law, at least for breakfast. That seemed to lessen my troubles during work. Strangely enough, my mother-in-law's attitude toward me turned increasingly frosty. She began to ignore my greetings. Then, she started criticizing the food I cooked. It's tasteless. Emily, don't forget to season just because you're busy. What's your game? Wait, what? Mother-in-law, I've seasoned it properly. Here, taste it. I had her taste it, but she retorted, "Your seasoning is bland. Can't you even understand that?" But adding more would be unhealthy. What's wrong with enjoying good food? Don't get too carried away just because you're good at cooking. With that, she poured an excessive amount of soy sauce over the dish I had prepared. I never got carried away. And I'm worried about our health here. I had an idea about what triggered this sudden change in my mother-in-law's attitude. It was something that happened at a birthday party for my sales daughter at our house. My husband has two sisters, both already married and living separately. They are both friendly people who said things like, "If you ever experience any bullying from your mother-in-law, let us know. We'll scold her for you." They've always been very kind to me, despite our brief acquaintance. Their husbands are also nice, gentle people. The older sister has a daughter, and we had her 5th birthday party at our house, where I helped mother-in-law with the cooking. The dining table was filled with various dishes. It was quite clear who made what. The party started, and my sales said, "Our daughter really loves the omelette rice from the restaurant where Emily works."
It's a dream come true to have it at home today. I'm happy to hear that. Actually, I'm in charge of making the omelette at work.
When I replied, the birthday girl also praised me. The food from the omelette lady is delicious. Watching this conversations, my mother-in-law was not amused.
Look, Grandma's stew is also delicious.
She tried to get her granddaughter to eat her signature dish, but the little girl protested.
No! It hurts my mouth when I eat that.
My sister's husbands, being considerate, did eat my mother-in-law's food, but after just a few bites, they asked me, "Sorry, could I get some more water?" Their water glasses were empty after just a few bites.
Hey, your seasoning has always been salty, but this is beyond common sense. Maybe Emily could teach you some cooking?
When my sister-in-law suggested this jokingly, my mother-in-law got angry and stormed out of the room, refusing to come back. I wished I hadn't cooked, but it was something my mother-in-law had asked me to do, and I couldn't do anything about it. The party ended early due to the tense atmosphere. My sister-in-law meant it as a joke, but it would hurt if the food you made was criticized. It must have been the same for my mother-in-law, who prepared the food hoping everyone would enjoy it. That night, I apologized to my mother-in-law. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." To which she replied,
"Don't get too comfortable, you're just a freeloader."
The next morning, the intense mother-in-law bullying started. My mother-in-law would douse the breakfast I prepared with seasoning, without even tasting it. If it was too brutal, it was disposed right in front of me. Naturally, I consulted my husband, Chris, about this. But he just said things like, "Aren't you being too cheeky? You should have just listened to what my mom said, or you're overthinking it," as if it was none of his business. To top it all off, despite us only being married for half a year, Chris started coming home later and later, often not returning until the date had changed. He kept using his work as an excuse, even skipping his niece's birthday party. That's the kind of man he was. Our marital life was falling apart. Of course, I thought about divorcing, but we had only been married for 6 months and I knew it would upset our parents, so I hesitated to take the plunge. Then one day, an event occurred that worsened the situation even further. My mother-in-law slipped on the stairs and injured her leg. My sister-in-law offered to come and help, but incredibly, my mother-in-law chose me. She said,
"You're technically the wife, so you should at least do this much. It's outrageous that you're trying to rely on my daughter."
From then on, I was being summoned by my mother-in-law even for trivial matters. She started contacting me even during work hours, causing me to ask for time off each time. My coworkers told me it was okay, but I felt guilty and eventually quit my job. My mother-in-law, as if she had been waiting for this moment, laughed at me saying, "Can't do your proud job anymore, how pitiful." From then on, not only during the day but also at night, I was suddenly summoned by my mother-in-law, and I had no time to rest. Even when I tried to talk to Chris, there were more and more days when he wouldn't come home. He said he was sleeping in his company's office, but I'm sure that was a lie. I had already made up my mind. However, I couldn't just leave without doing anything, so I decided to take revenge on them. Later on, while the three of us were having breakfast, I brought up the topic.
"Please divorce me."
They both looked surprised, saying,
"What are you talking about? We haven't even been married for a year yet? It's you who'll be laughed at. Are you thinking I'm cheating? Ridiculous."
"That's right. You're embarrassing us in public. Emily, you're really out of line." Even though I was made fun of by the two of them, I was not swayed and said,
"Chris is not at home. My mother-in-law only knows how to bully her daughter-in-law. Who would want to live in such a house? I will divorce. My mind won't change."
Seeing an unusually determined me, The two of them seemed panicked and Chris said,
"We're sorry, I'll try to come home as early as possible. You can even go back to your parents' home for a while. But my mom has this leg issue. I have work, so could you stay here at least until her leg heals?"
Chris said that, but it was probably hard for him to apologize, and that was clearly shown on his face. "I was not being very mature, I'm sorry. Can't you stay with us a bit longer? Your feelings might change." To which I replied, "Understood." The moment I said that, they both grinned as if to say, "She's easy." They are, indeed, a mother and a son. After that, the bullying stopped, and Chris started coming home earlier. But such peaceful times didn't last long. My husband, Chris, started coming home late again, and the harassment from my mother-in-law resumed. Mother-in-law's leg didn't heal at all, yet she frequently went out, claiming it to be a hospital visit. Finding this peculiar, I ended up discovering a shocking truth. A few days later, my cell phone was blowing up with calls. The callers were, of course, mother-in-law and Chris. When I answered the call from Chris, he said,
"Hey, where the hell are you? What are you doing leaving my mom like this?"
Chris, on the other end of the phone, was pretty furious. I didn't care whether this man was angry or not, so I replied, "Huh? I'm at my parents' house. What's wrong with that? It was you who told me I could go home."
"What are you talking about? My mom's leg still isn't healed, right?"
I heard someone making a ruckus in the background. I recognized the voice. It was mother-in-law. I said,
"Anyway, I'm not going back to that house. Please contact me through a lawyer from now on,"
and hung up. For a while after that, I enjoyed some peaceful times. During my stay at my parents' house, they made lots of my favorite dishes. I also cooked for my parents, and when my mother said, "Emily's cooking is the best," I couldn't help but shed tears. A few days later, I received a call from a certain person. I was surprised to see the name displayed, because the caller was my detested mother-in-law. It was an apology for her past behavior, and an invitation to her birthday party, which was to be held the next week. She insisted that I attend. The venue was a fancy restaurant near the station. The chef at the restaurant had recently changed, a man who had trained in France. It was a place that was becoming popular because you could taste authentic French cuisine. Of course, I was under no obligation to attend, but I thought it would be a good opportunity, so I agreed happily. Mother-in-law was overjoyed and sent me the date and time, insisting that I must come. On the day of the birthday party the following week, Chris and mother-in-law were already at the entrance of the restaurant. As soon as they saw me, he seemed to be smirking. The members were the same as the last party, 2 couples of sisters-in-law and their little girl. Including my mother-in-law, husband, and me, it's a total of 8. The sisters-in-law hadn't been told about the divorce yet, and I was asked to keep it a secret because they intended to tell them at the end of today's meal. In the middle of all this, the sisters-in-law and their husbands showed up.
"Emily, long time no see. You look great."
As always, they were kind. Once everyone had arrived, we entered the restaurant. As soon as we entered the restaurant, a waiter greeted us.
"Is this a reservation for 7 people?"
7? We're 8, though. While I was thinking that, my mother-in-law loudly exclaimed,
"The reservation is correct. It's for 7 people. We would like this person to be seated separately, please."
Of course, this person referred to me. As proof, she grabbed my shoulder and pushed me forward. Looking back, the sisters-in-law and their husbands had a puzzled look on their faces, but my husband and mother-in-law were smirking. Ah, so this was their plan. How silly.
"Emily has a surprise, doesn't she?"
said my mother-in-law. Who on earth tells about a surprise at their own birthday party? Ah, right in front of me.
Well then, if she likes surprises so much, I'll happily give her one.
Emily, is that true? The sisters-in-law looked worried, so I said, That's right. I was trying to keep it a secret, but my mother-in-law figured it out. Excuse me, is there a vacant seat? When I asked the waiter, he kindly guided me to a seat. The table was out of sight from my in-laws, which was nice because I didn't have to see those people. After that, the in-laws enjoyed their meal for a while. A kid's meal was prepared for the sister-in-law's daughter, and she was very happy, saying, Amazing! This tastes just like my sister's omelette. The sisters-in-law also seemed to enjoy their food, saying it was delicious. For some reason, my mother-in-law was proud, saying, See, ever since the chef changed, the taste has improved significantly. The meat dishes after this are exquisite. She bragged proudly. In harmony with that, my husband nods in agreement. Next, it was finally time for the meat dish that my mother-in-law had been talking about to be served. A delicious-looking dish was placed in front of my Sael and her husband, but no matter how long we waited, no food was brought to my mother-in-law and husband. Growing impatient, they summoned the waiter and demanded, What's going on here? The loudness of my mother-in-law's voice echoed throughout the restaurant, something that seemed out of place in a fancy restaurant. Some customers even grimaced at the commotion. The chef himself will be bringing your dishes. Please wait a little longer. When the waiter replied in this manner, my mother-in-law responded, Oh really? Is it because we frequent this place so much? She didn't seem completely displeased. Sorry for the wait. They turned around as if to say, We've been waiting. But upon seeing who brought their dishes, their eyes bulged out in shock. And no wonder. Standing in front of them, clad in a chef's coat, was me. Wah! Emily! What are you doing? Aha! So that's what a surprise is. Emily, you're full of surprises. While the in-laws said this, my husband and mother-in-law had faces that said, This was not what we were expecting. I laid out the dishes without caring. I made this especially for you, based on your preferences. The dish placed in front of my mother-in-law was a black lump doused in a plentiful amount of black sauce. Of course, it was thoroughly flavored with soy sauce. For the final touch, please add this, I said, pouring extra soy sauce for her. She was shocked and froze on the spot. Furthermore, we also have a special menu for this customer. I placed a plate in front of my husband, haphazardly lined with batteries ranging from size AA to D. And for an additional flavor, please use this, I said, placing an entire bottle of soy sauce right in front of him. I said, placing an entire bottle of soy sauce right in front of him. Because he always harps on about work, I arranged batteries for my husband, who loves his job as an electrician. I even selected the most expensive batteries sold at other electronic stores, so I expect some gratitude. Seeing this, my niece were laughing hard. My sister-in-law and her husband had looks on their faces that said, Isn't this a bit too much? My mother-in-law and husband, with red faces, yelled, You're making fools of us. And this restaurant, for allowing such a thing. Call the manager. As my husband said this, the manager appeared and said, That would be me. What the hell are you thinking? We are the customers here. We'll sue you. Hearing that, the manager replied simply, Is that so? In that case, we'll be suing you too for disrupting our business. Huh? Was there response? Was there response? It seems that the two of them frequently patronized this restaurant and had always acted arrogantly towards the staff. They had a reputation for nitpicking things like, This is too bland, or this has no flavor, and never considered the inconvenience they were causing other customers. They were well known as troublesome complainers.
We've tolerated it until now because you're family, but it seems we'll finally be able to distance ourselves. We won't hold back. Right, Emily?
Yeah, big brother. Upon hearing this, the two of them looked surprised and turned their gazes towards us. Actually, this restaurant has been managed by my brother for some time now. My brother works in France, and he couldn't make it back home when I got married due to his busy schedule. Although he sent his congratulations, my mother-in-law and my husband, Bob, had never met him. Since my brother had been sent family photos, he knew what my mother-in-law and Bob looked like.
I apologize for not being able to attend your wedding. I wanted to reach out multiple times, but you both always had company.
Upon hearing this, their faces turned pale. Feeling the conversation was getting long, my sisters-in-law told their husbands to head home first, then suggested, "Should we dig into this further?" They were smiling, but their eyes weren't. Seeing the usually cheerful two of them looking like that, it gave me a bit of a chill.
It's just business. You know, the old guys in the main street, they like these trendy places nowadays.
Chris uttered this, and as he did, a waiter approached and handed over an earring saying,
"Your guest left this behind last time. You're dining with men who wear earrings. Isn't that sketchy?"
My sister-in-law commented. I couldn't help but laugh.
"No, sister-in-law, this man has been having an affair with a woman who works at a florist across his shop."
Chris's face turned ghostly pale. He looked at me as if asking how I knew, but I had hired a private investigator some time ago. My intuition was correct. Chris had been meeting the woman almost every day after work. This restaurant seemed to be her favorite, and they visited almost every week. Photos of them entering a hotel together and other evidences were plentiful.
"I'm serious about her. Marrying you was a mistake. I'll gladly divorce you."
Chris, who had been reluctant about divorce, had suddenly changed his stance. Of course, this was quite convenient for me, who wanted a divorce as soon as possible.
"Sure, but I'll be claiming alimony, so make sure to pay." "I just landed a big contract recently. I'll gladly pay," he laughed.
That's good to hear. Then about you, mother-in-law. Up until then, my mother-in-law, who had been silent, shivered. She was not as much of a regular here as Chris, but she was a regular nonetheless.
"But I'm already a widow. It doesn't matter."
Upon hearing her say this, I decided to share another fact.
"I had the PI look into you as well, mother-in-law. Your relationship with your partner seems to be going on for about 5 years. But wait, didn't FIL pass away just last year?" "Wah!"
Upon hearing this, my sisters-in-law glared at their mother in anger. No surprise there, the two sisters-in-law were closer to their late father than their mother. Learning the truth, they were furious. I was also surprised, but it seemed strange how detailed the PI was about my mother-in-law. Upon asking, it turns out my FIL had also hired the same investigator.
"You've been lying about Dad all along. And Chris, you're cheating on Emily. Are you two out of your minds?"
The sisters-in-law's anger showed no signs of cooling down. Seeing that it was disturbing other customers, we decided to disperse for the day and regroup at the in-laws' house another day. That day, I said goodbye to my brother and the staff with high fives. A few days later, the divorce papers were filled out in the presence of my two sisters-in-law. My husband, completely unapologetic, was saying things like,
"Well, just don't regret it, huh?"
"Really, despite my poor mobility, I ended up with such an outrageous wife," he grumbled. Tired of his incessant complaints, I shouted, "Watch your step, mother-in-law," and she jumped, exclaiming, "What?" Indeed, her leg was perfectly healed. Even though it was healed, she continued to pretend it was painful just to torment me. Such a spiteful woman she was. But, to me, she was now nothing more than a stranger. And so, my married life ended in less than a year. I didn't regret it at all. Later, alimony for both my ex-husband and the woman was deposited into my account. Since it was deposited simultaneously, I assume my husband paid for the woman's portion too, but that's beside the point. As for the pair afterwards, despite going into debt to pay the alimony, my husband was promptly dumped after the divorce. I later learned from my sister-in-law that the woman was infamous in her hometown as a homewrecker. My ex-husband had bragged about landing a big contract, but as it turns out, the day we were at the restaurant, there were mostly regular customers, and upon us leaving the restaurant after having to deal with the complaining couple, applause erupted. By the way, I was told by my brother that there were only reservation off 7, so I figured there was no place for me to begin with, which is why I had though of this plan. Of course, they're now banned from the restaurant. Word of their misconduct had spread, and it seems they lost that big contract. They deserve it, I suppose. It's an electronics store that seems to run on trust. Prospering in the future will likely be difficult. As for my mother-in-law, she was dumped too, and on top of that, when she went to the hospital due to poor health, it was found that her long-term dietary habits were to blame and that even with treatment, her body would never return to normal. She deserved this as well. As for me, I've returned to work at the Western-style restaurant I used to work at. Despite the trouble I had caused, they warmly welcomed me back.
Hey, omelette lady!
My sisters-in-law still frequently visit the restaurant. They've cut ties with their mother and brother since that incident. They couldn't forgive them for neglecting me, who they had treated like a little sister and deceived their father the whole time. And they have no intention of forgiving them in the future. Despite everything, I'm happiest when I'm cooking. I'm the happiest I've ever been right now.